So I mentioned before that I like a game called Endless Legends, or Endless Legend rather, no S. Endless Legend is a 4X game. Basically, it's basically Civ, but in a fantasy setting with a different take on certain mechanics of Civ, and really a different take on how the whole game as a whole is meant to be played. Now, I think there are certain aspects of Endless Legend that just make it really distinct from Civ and other 4X games, or at least 4X games that have survived to this day. I can't really speak much to 4X games from, the past much. Most popular 4X game I've played, obviously, is Civ, and I would say the second most popular 4X game I've played is, like, Stellaris, which, is its own deviancy. It is its own deviancy from the 4X formula. The earliest Civ game I've played is Civ 4, which, makes me sound like a really big up-and-comer and stuff, but whatever, I don't care. The point is, I think that the reason why people still talk about Endless Legend in the face of Civ, because Civ still dominates the 4X market, but I think Endless Legend kind of comes at it from such a unique perspective and does it fairly well, that's why it's still it's mildly successful in the face of Civ, which has basically overshadowed the entire rest of the 4X market. Because, like I said, it's not that I haven't played particularly old games. I grew up, in that sort of culture, so I've played plenty of older games. I played Mario 64 when it was on 64. I played blanking out here. Oh, Crash Bandicoot, the original Crash Bandicoot. I know I don't really have to justify my own game palette, but whatever, I'm doing it anyways. In any case, I think that Endless Legend has a unique thing because it is a 4X game with a narrative. I think that's part of it. Like, if you boot up Endless Legend, you pick a faction, you are playing through the narrative of Endless Legend in the context of that faction. Whereas in Civ, it's less about. I would say Civ is less factional than any other, than Endless Legend rather, because in Civ you're basically always having this, unless you're at the level of Civ where you're playing like Deity or something, you're probably mostly playing the same strats, or you're playing the strats that are popular for certain Civs or something. You're not really thinking about what faction you are specifically so much. Unless you're at a really high level of play in Civ. And meanwhile, Endless Legend, there are each faction has their own game mechanic. It's not just a spin on the game mechanics of the game. Each faction has their own specific game mechanic, and it is that game mechanic is featured extensively in the various factional quests, because Endless Legend, as a part of its game victories, it has, of course, the Conquer victory, Technology victory, I think, but it also has this Quest victory. And a Quest victory is if you follow the storyline of a faction far enough to progress the quest line of it to an extent where you win. Now, I haven't actually played any of these to completion, but that has its own implications. But they all basically revolve around the faction's unique kind of mechanical twist, where, for example, the Vultures, they are all about technology, right? They have this unique mechanic where they utilize the various resources in the game. There are strategic resources in Endless Legend, where if you're playing the Vultures, you get certain bonuses for basically using them. The unique resources they're usually used to create units, but the Vultures specifically can use strategic resources as if they're luxury resources. And a luxury resource, you can use it for some sort of bonus. So you can use, for example, Titanite, Titanium, sorry, Demon Souls. Dark Souls, rather. Jesus Christ. You can use Titanium as a tech booster sort of deal. And another faction, the Lords of... Shit, I'm blinking out. Broken Lords, that's what they're called. They are basically a bunch of suits and armor that are bound, souls and suits of armor that are bound to soul, suits and armor and stuff. And in order to survive, they have to either consume dust or they're basically vampires. They can eat people, essentially eat their souls in order to sustain their own lives, and that plays a major part in like the society, like the in lore society, as well as like the quests, because like the in lore society is the society that you are leading in the game, and they play kind of cleverly with the mechanics of the game aside from their unique mechanic, as well as the unique mechanic. Like in a part of it, there's a baron in the faction of the like the Broken Lords that is all about vampiring souls. He's all like, yeah, it's cool. I want to cap people and consume their very life force, and it's amazing. And at some point, like there's a really big faction in like these suits of armor guys that think it's cool, and so you have to appease that faction in the quest line. Now, like in terms of the actual game, of course, if you never do anything with it, like there's not going to be any civil war breaking, which would be really cool if they did have that, but it doesn't happen because that would kind of put them at a significant disadvantage if their quest makes a detriment for them. That'd be unless everyone else was balanced in the same way, it would be weird. So I understand why they didn't do it. But still, it does have in-game consequences in terms of like you get that guy as a hero. Like you get that Baron as like a hero who is now a character within the context of like not only the quest line but your game itself. Like, you know, you can use him in your armies and as a governor and stuff. But you shouldn't lose him because I'm pretty sure he plays a bigger role going forward. Like you need to do something with him or something. But I'm getting lost in the details here, so I'll continue. I can't provide these like details with each faction because I haven't played each faction, but that kind of ties into the whole discovery aspect of it, where you know you're discovering a game with a narrative, and you can kind of piece together the entire narrative by playing each of the factions. Because overall, Endless Legend is about like you're on a planet that is like the clock is ticking on this planet. As you progress into the late game, like the winters, which are basically like a phase of the world, because let me go back. The world has two phases: summer and winter. In summer, you know, things are pretty normal. Nothing bad is like the only thing happening is basically the regular game. It's how you would normally play a 4X game. But then at some point, it's like a winter clock essentially, which gives you a broad range of turns that winter could happen in. It'll be like from 1 to 12 when it's like getting really like late in the time. And when winter happens, all of your production basically goes down, like especially your food. Your food will plummet, but all your other resources will also go down. And you know, all of your like movement is harder. I imagine there are also like attack penalties on different units. Like winter's all around a bad time, like it would be in our world, but winters last for years in this world, so it's a really big consequence here. And as the game progresses, winters get longer and happen more frequently. So the game is presenting a scenario where you are basically approaching a wintry apocalypse, and in order to win the game, like say via the quest line, or via like a, how can I put it? Because there is like a kind of world quest going on essentially that'll open up throughout the game. And one of the victory conditions is completing this world quest, though I think there are also story quest victory conditions. But yeah, I'm again getting lost in the details here. I'm just trying to talk about how, you know, this kind of narrative blending into a 4X game kind of makes for unique gameplay that is also really interesting inherently, kind of, because it is also helped by the fact that Endless Legend is a fucking beautiful 4X game. Like, you know, you don't really play 4X games for the visuals, but if you like, you know, zoom in on the on various like special locations in the Endless Legends, or even just regular locations, it's very pretty. But yeah, I think I've said my piece on it. Endless Legend is a 4X game with a narrative. It's cool. If I had to compare it to something recent, probably Stellaris would be the closest representation of a 4X game with a narrative, even if that narrative is more broad, because like your faction in Stellaris, it doesn't matter to the grand narrative of Stellaris unless you're powerful enough to matter in that context, if that makes sense. Like, if an endgame crisis happens and you're not prepared for it, you don't matter to the endgame crisis. Like, you don't matter to that game's story. You are going to die, essentially. Like many of the other NPCs in the game. Like, you're just not going to make it. If you are strong enough, you will matter to the end game, like to the quest line. And that quest line is going to progress. Like, it's only going to be stopped if you have enough firepower to stop it. Whereas in Endless Legend, like, it has nuances to it. So I think that, like, it's very different in that regard. Cause like the quest line is inherent to it, and it's an integral part of the different factions of Endless Legends. Like, each of the factions of Endless Legends is aware of, like, the impending doom of the planet, essentially, or they become aware of the impending doom of the planet at least. So yeah, it's cool. That's it.